just riding that roller coaster.
This is Locked On Sports Atlanta, and it's time for the Atlanta Baseball Party, only on Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome into the Atlanta Baseball Party, your home for the best Atlanta Braves baseball talk. It's local insight you can't get anywhere but right here at Locked On. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Jarvis Davis and Demetrius Bell. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. The Atlanta Baseball Party is also part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Now, in typical Braves fashion, at least for this season, one bat cools off while another maybe heats up. We'll discuss, and the Braves are still fighting for their playoff lives and are hoping the return of the heart and soul of this team will vault them into the postseason. We'll talk about that too, but first, let's get into the Braves' current swoon and why we're seeing it at the worst possible time. Jarvis, with the loss to the Cincinnati Reds Tuesday, the Atlanta Braves have now lost 3 straight and are 2 games behind the New York Mets for the last wild card spot in the National League. What has been their biggest issue during this stretch?
For me, I think about all of the constants that we've seen throughout this season. Even with all the injuries, we understand that the pitching staff has been carried this team. We understand that the bullpen has been one of the better bullpens in the league. And for me, I just look at it from a standpoint of that's the thing that you got to think about or start to get concerned about once you see those things start to kind of fall apart. With Baseball Hernandez getting touched up, in that Dodger series, you just got to look at it from a standpoint of this is not the time for this. Like you mentioned, this is the worst possible time you can start going through these things and start seeing these things start to fall apart. And even defensively, you always been a person to bring that up throughout the entire season. Like defense getting a little weird. You got Gio Urshela missing a small pop fly, and then that just turns into a thing with Jesse Chavez. So all those things kind of combine for where we are right now, and I think that it is just the worst possible timing when you think about it.
Yeah, and Demetrius, you look at what the Braves are trying to do, and it seemed like they were right there, right? Always kind of right there with the Mets, sometimes right ahead of the Mets, and then all of a sudden it's like the Mets, we kept waiting for the Mets to Met, but it's like the Braves are braving in a bad way because the Braves have now had this 3-game swoon, and worst possible time, you kind of are really running out of time. But really, I think what's more important, if they are to make their way into the playoffs, is to figure out what in the world is going on. I mean, when you kind of look at this 3-game stretch, what are you seeing as sort of the biggest challenge or the biggest reason that they've sort of, I don't want to say fall off the cliff, but they're kind of falling off the cliff?
Yeah, it's just kind of like, they're just like, as I said, like in one of my articles for batterypower.com, they're just consistently inconsistent.
Yes.
It'll just be like one day, like, oh, the offense will show up and hit score 12 runs. It'll be all good. And we'll be thinking like, oh, finally, they're going to finally hit their stretch. But at the same time, it's September. You are what you are at this point. And they are just a inconsistent offense where it's just like, you never know. And it really doesn't even depend on the pitcher because they'll face a really talented pitcher. And they, for instance, they played Jack Flaherty on Saturday, enough for a bunch of runs. But then they'll turn around and get shut out over 7 innings by Jake Irvin. So it's just what are you supposed to do?
Yeah.
So, and then also it doesn't help that because the offense is so inconsistent, the pitching has to be great every single night. And when the pitching isn't great and when the defense isn't great, it's just you can't really do anything. Because you look at one stat that I like to look at is their record in games where the other team scores 4 runs is abysmal. I don't even think they won 10 games this year where the other team scored 4 runs. So last night, even when they were up 5-4, I was thinking, oh no. It's there. And they just had one of the nights like they did last night where Pierce Johnson just gives up 2 runs instead of that 2 home runs Spencer Steer. It's just oh, well, they scored 5 runs. That's it for them tonight. So it's just
You're absolutely right, Demetrius, because if you look, and we're talking about just the last 3 games, right? But if you kind of look at that typical sample size that we look at in baseball, which is more like a 10-game stretch, if you will, take those 3 games out of it. And yeah, you've got the 10-1 win against the Dodgers. Then you got another 6-2 win against the Dodgers. But you're right. Then you scratch your head because then you get a 5-1 loss to the Nats. And that was like the night after you did what? Scored 12 runs on them and you shut them out. And it's that kind of back and forth that absolutely makes you scratch your head and you're wondering, okay, no, real talk, which one of these teams is actually the Braves? Like, will the real Braves team stand up? And to your point about consistency, Demetrius, will the real Braves team stay standing up? And that's the one thing that you can't quite get, despite the 3 in a row. If you look at the sample size in its totality, when you look across sort of that 10-game stretch, even looking back to the Reds, who, I don't know, have their number, whether they score 1 runner or not, which was, what happened in that makeup game about a week and a half ago. And then you see kind of the crazy with the Blue Jays. It's just the weirdest thing where you just cannot figure them out.
Right. And add to what Dimitri was talking about, T, that's the weird thing, right? And another inconsistency, right? We talk about defense, the and the consistency of the pitching, and that's starting to kind of fall off. But how about this? I like to refer to the stat as RISP. Runners in scoring position. They went 0 for 10 in scoring position in the first 4 innings against Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Oh yeah, I'm glad I got that right on the first shot. So yeah, when you think about it from that small sample size, just guys just getting on base, that has to be demoralizing when you think about it. And then once you go through those things, those struggles, then you start to come to the plate after the fact, and guys' mentals start to change. We understand how mental baseball is, and how those guys' mindset and perspective is huge when it comes to them being successful at the plate. And those guys start to press. Even Kevin Seitzer talked about how, I know we're going to talk about Marcel Ozuna in the next segment, but he talked about how guys just change how they do things when they struggle. And you have to be really consistent and really be focused to keep that same mindset, even when you in your struggles. And I think that the Braves just haven't been able to do that. And that's why I feel like that's why we're here in this 3-game losing streak, when you're fighting, scratching, and clawing, trying to get into the playoffs.
Yeah, that's one of the things that was a challenge for them at the beginning of the season. They're currently 241, but honestly, let's just be real. With running in scoring position, that's probably because they finally had that uptick in August, if we're being real about it. But this has been a problem for them across the entirety of the season. Now, we also talked about, as we wrap up, Raisel Iglesias and how he's been as of late. The pitching, the bullpen, really the pitching staff overall has been nothing short of dominant and incredible for this team. But going into Sunday, Iglesias had not allowed an earned run in a record 30 consecutive appearances of 1 inning or more. That's across all the majors. And then he ended up giving up 5 earned runs to the Dodgers. I mean, you kind of hope, Jarvis, that's just a one-off situation for Raisel Iglesias, because if the Braves happen to get in the postseason, you most certainly can't have that being the rule more than the exception for Raisel.
Yeah, this has to be a one-off, right? They have no choice. So you're talking about 11 games left in the season, with a Met series coming up. Are you going to finish up with the Reds, and hopefully you can spank the lowly Marlins? But we can't make those assumptions at this point right now, right? Because of what they've roller coaster ride we've been on for this entire season is something that, I said that I'm going to have to get used to, Demetrius. I just been like, hey, man, I'm just going to ride the roller coaster, man. Whatever happens. It is what it is. And I can't get, too high and can't get too low on this team, because they'll give you a performance like this. And then with Raisel having this type of outing and all of these games coming up that I mentioned, they're going to need him to be that. So I feel like has to be a one-off going forward.
Yeah, and we better hope, to your point about consistency, that somehow it gets a little bit more consistent at the plate. But in typical Braves fashion, at least for this season, one bat cools off while another maybe heats up. You better hope so, but we'll get into it in Going Deep. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is brought to you by FanDuel. So you've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Well, we have something a little different for you now through September 22nd. So you got about a 4-day window of time where you can take advantage of this. All FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. With a YouTube TV base plan, you'll also be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account, which most of us have, real talk, and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. So again, that's now through September 22nd. All FanDuel customers can get $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. So for our local fans, that's a good look now that the Falcons have actually won a game. Now you know you want to tap in, and you know you want to not only take advantage of this from FanDuel, but also have that YouTube TV base plan. So visit FanDuel.com and download America's #1 sportsbook. Again, that's FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. And again, all you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can cancel that YouTube TV base plan at any time, but take advantage of the 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV, courtesy of FanDuel. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is also brought to you by GameTime. Now, GameTime also has a new feature called GameTime Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. GameTime Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. So GameTime Picks gives you that panoramic view from your seat in the app before you buy. It's the lowest price guarantee that they have, or they will credit you 110% of the difference, and your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticket industry. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Now, terms do apply, but again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download the GameTime app today, because what time is it? It's game time. Well, Jarvis, from the book of Make It Make Sense. We talked earlier about the pitching staff, not just the starting rotation, but also the bullpen being the stalwart for this Atlanta Braves team, at least until of recent. We talked about the defense being the stalwart. It's probably my favorite aspect of what the Braves are able to do, because I feel like it's always been consistent, not just this year, but for it's as many seasons as I can think back. Well, we know it's been a little shaky as well. Now this, Jarvis, this is where it gets to be a bit much. When Snip Bear can't make good things happen and Marcel Ozuna is falling off the cliff, we got problems. JD, what is going on with the Big Bear?
Oh, if I can.
You call him Ozone when he's having a swoon, or
no, I can't call him Ozone. Like that particular nickname is for when he is doing excellent work, and I have to reserve. I'm gonna call him Marcel. Marcel has been struggling tremendously ever since August 20th, to be exact. I'm talking about no home runs, 4 RBIs, and when you think about it from that standpoint, it's just, and he had been on a tear since last year, and one of the top guys, we talk about this man as far as being in the running for the Triple Crown. He's either first or second in batter average, home runs and RBIs, like just being right up there with guys like Shohei Ohtani. Like he's been right there behind him, as far as in that running. So when you think about it from that aspect, like this is something that we're not used to, and it's hard to say. Like I feel like we're a broken record. It's just horrible timing. It's horrible. It's just horrible timing, because Marcel has been the guy that you can count on in all the struggles for everybody. Even Austin Riley, when he was out there, I know he started to heat up right before he got hurt, but just all up and down this lineup. Ozzie Albies when he was here, but Marcel has been the guy that was that steady constant throughout the entire season, and now we're looking at it from a standpoint like, oh, what is going on? So yeah, this one right here concerns me, right? Because I feel like August 20th, which is almost 30 days right now. We're coming up on 30 days. That is enough of a sample size to get concerned. And with, like I said, with 11 games left to go, it's hard to kind of, to make a case for him, turning around that quickly.
Exactly. And D-Bell, it is tough because we were thinking like what a marvelous turn for him as a DH being in the conversation with a Francisco Lindor or a Shohei Ohtani. I mean, that was pretty darn impressive. Hitting for power, hitting for average, just really always being that guy whenever the Braves were down. You might talk about a game like a 5-4 where the Braves had 4 runs and they were trying to get over the hump to get the win. And if Marcel Ozuna was coming to the plate late, you honestly thought, okay, Braves have a shot. He was on pace to have a 50 home run season. Now he's probably going to be lucky to get to 40, if you will. And it's really just kind of tough watching because you think about the fact that, you know, he's now hitting something where he was maybe these last 18 games, Jarvis, to your earlier point about that August slump, if you even go like a little bit further, August 28th, last 18 games, just hitting 250, 351, 281, just numbers that don't count, but more don't count for what you've been expecting from Marcel. But D-Bell, maybe more importantly, from what Jarvis said, it's the 0 home runs and the 0 RBI for me.
Right. It's just like Jarvis said, it's just a horrible time to like have a downturn like this.
Yeah.
And it's just like, you know, one stat that I like to use is a WRC plus, which is very simple, where it's just like, 100 is average, just like bang on complete average. And anything above 100 is good, and anything below 100 is below average. So, like, ever since the stretch, his WRC plus has been around 99, which is, again, below average.
Yep.
And compare that to what he's been doing for the whole season, where he's been putting up, like, superstar numbers around, like, 150. And it's been affecting the Braves at that, because now the Braves, because of this downturn, like, they have a team in that stretch since August 21st. They're only hitting around, like, 92 WRC plus as a team. And so we need him to like step back up, because otherwise, like, you know, they're just gonna be adrift. And I feel like it's just like typical of this season, where it's just like, one guy gets going, but the other guy slumps. So.
Right. Exactly. And you just can't have a situation, D-Bell, where you have more than one player slumping at one time, because you do look at Matt Olson, it's like, okay, can we get it from somewhere? So it's like Marcel's not doing it, Matt's not doing it, and you're just in a situation where there's nobody who really can kind of take up for where someone leaves off, unless JD somehow, some way, the guy that was brought back for solar power purposes finally starts to heat up, and that's Jorge Soler.
Oh yes, like he has in the last 11 games, he's on 11-game hitting streak. He has 13 hits, scored 8 runs. He's only struck out 9 times, and when you think about only 1 home run for 5 RBIs, but you know, we think about that batting average. He was a guy that I was like, I don't even care about your batting average. I just need you to hit for power. He's even batting 351 right now. So and he's in this hit during this hitting streak. So when you think about it from that aspect, I feel like he's a guy that if he gets on the heater, oh my gosh, you know, it kind of gives me hope again. But you know, just like with this team, the Braves are just kind of stay even keel, because I don't know who's going to fall off the map, you know. So for me, I feel like, you know, Jorge Soler is a guy that gives me hope. And you talking about slugging in 595, over OPS over 1, all of those things are just amazing, great. Like, keep doing it. That's kind of where I'm at right now. I can't get my hopes up, but I'm just like, hey man, I see you, Jorge, and keep on doing what you're doing.
And Demetrius, Jarvis has been very consistent with this. I have to give it to him for his consistently inconsistent team. The one thing that he has been is consistent about saying he's going to be even keeled. So his no up and no down, because you can't, I mean, it's a roller coaster ride, but in order for you to keep your sanity or protect your peace, as we say, you've got to kind of stay even keeled. But you got to say Jorge Soler gives you a little bit of optimism, because this is indeed what Alex Anthopoulos went out and got him for.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, and even like when he had that little downturn, I just figured like, for him, that's why just give me a blip. It's like the only thing I was really worried about was like how he would fare in the outfield and defense. And you know, as long as he's not like completely disastrous, like, and he was for a little bit. He did have a little stretch where it was just like, oh boy, oh no, this is gonna be a disaster. But,
especially when Chris Sale was on the mound, Demetrius.
Yeah, like it was kind of funny, like seeing him in the dugout, and then like Chris Sale was looking at him like, bro, what are you doing? like what did I do to you?
Right.
But yeah, like as long as he's like, you know, he has been like completely disastrous ever since that little stretch. And as long as he's been doing that, and like you figure like, he's gonna figure it out to play it eventually. And fortunately for the Braves, he has. Like Jarvis said, he's been on the stretch for like the past like 11 or 12 games where he's been picking up hits, he's been racking up hits. And like, you know, you figure the power's gonna come. Like he did hit a no doubter last night, which was beautiful to watch.
Sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
So you figure, like, you know, he's gonna heat up, and as we've seen in 2021, like, you know, he can definitely help carry you to a World Series if you get in the tournament. But like right now, that's a huge if.
Big time.
Yeah,
Big
yeah,
time.
to say the least, to say the least. So let me ask you guys this. We talked about Marcel in his swoon, if you will, and for that matter, Matt Olson being non-existent. And then we talked about Jorge Soler kind of heating up. Is there someone else on this team where even if you just looked at it, maybe the last game, if you will, or the last week, or even the last month, maybe they haven't given you anything consistently, but just someone where you're saying in these last couple of games, there's something I've seen in the last month, week, or even the last game that tells me if that guy can just find one more notch or maybe take it up a level, maybe these Braves have an outside chance to slide into the postseason.
You can go ahead, me. Yeah.
Okay. For me, it's just been like always like the catcher position. Just like especially like Travis d'Arnaud, he's been like fine this year, but like I need Shawn Murphy to step up like so badly. And like you can tell, like you can blame like the injury, the oblique injury that's always like really tricky to recover from, but like we just need more from him so bad. And like he's shown like little tiny flashes of like being the Shawn Murphy that we're used to seeing, but like we just need so much more from him. And if he can like heat up, that'll give like the Braves like just an extra option at catcher. And additionally, like Travis d'Arnaud being the steady presence with his heading. But right now, like if he can heat up to like finish off the season, like that'll be just really crucial in my eyes.
Yeah, and by heat up we mean just do anything, something.
Right. Yes, something.
Smart. Yeah, if you
preferably with runners in scoring position too.
Scoring position. How about just batting in one run for it, Shawn Murphy? How about you, JD? Who's that one guy?
I mean, I'm all on board with what Demetrius said. When you think about what Shawn Murphy was brought in here to do and what he did last year, oh my gosh, he spoiled us, right? So for me, I like it's just something. I think Demetrius, you bring up a great point because I think it's something when you can get that production from that catcher spot, because I know Travis d'Arnaud hasn't been all as that great this year, but he has been clutch. I could definitely make a case for him being clutch, coming through in those clutch moments with runners in scoring position. And when he went down, it was kind of like, oh man, you were just starting to really, come through for everybody. And then we saw Shawn Murphy have to play every day, and we saw him get exposed, for the most part. So for me, I feel like bringing Shawn Murphy, getting his ish together, will help this team a lot, because I feel like it's just something when you get that, that production at the plate for the catcher spot.
Yeah, I think that would be huge. And I think too, just sometimes if you can get that spark out of nowhere, I think that's also something that can kind of propel a team that's kind of in the dumps, because like you all said, sometimes it's a mindset thing. And if you can just get to that one space and get it from somewhere where you haven't gotten it from, that could be the uptick that you need. Now, like we talked about this entire show, the Braves are still fighting for their playoff lives, and they're hoping the return of the heart and soul of this team will vault them into the postseason. We'll talk about that in the stretch. This episode of our Atlanta Baseball Party is also brought to you by Arena Club. So for most of us, like collecting cards, the idea of spending true grand or more on that isn't quite in the cards. But if you love collecting, that's some serious money to drop. And there's another way that you can do it thanks to slap packs from arenaclub.com. Now it's possible to score gem mints for a fraction of their retail price. Every card that was listed was hit from last week's Arena Club slap pack drop. Arena Club is the only repack that provides real value, a complete view of all possible cards and clear hit rates for each one. Now, they are revolutionizing the repack game with transparency. After your pulls are revealed, Arena Club, they'll immediately be placed in your showroom for safekeeping, selling, trading, or auction. As well, the Arena Club grading process is accurate, fast and transparent with a full grade rationale provided, an explanation of how your card was scored. So whether you're buying, selling, trading, or displaying, Arena Club is the card collecting platform you have to check out. And I think it's so cool that now we even have a card collecting platform to talk about, because hey, back in the day it was just kind of trade, and you kind of see how it goes. But right now you can get 10% off your first slab pack or card purchase by going to arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb and use code LockedOnMLB. That's arenaclub.com/lockedonmlb, code LockedOnMLB for 10% off your first purchase. Again, that's at arenaclub.com. Now, Ozzie Albies went 2 for 3 with a 3-run homer and a walk in AAA Gwinnett's 4-3 win at Jacksonville. It was his first rehab game and also first at bats versus live pitching in 2 months since, of course, breaking his left wrist. Now, he is set to play again today, then join the Braves Friday, hopefully, if everything goes well, at Miami. So for you, Demetrius, is this the type of spark maybe that the Braves can use to solidify that final playoff spot in the National League?
Oh, absolutely. You really need him to be that smart, because you need just anybody to be a smart, really. But
Anybody.
when Ozzie come back, being basically the captain of the team, it would be huge to have him back. And it is asking a lot of him to do it, especially coming after injury, and also he's not even fully healed from the injury, because he's only going to be hitting right-handed when he comes back. But at the same time, I'd much rather have him hitting right-handed than not hitting at all. So, but at the same time, I do feel like he can give you the spark that you need, and I feel like he'd be up to the task of doing so. So hopefully, he will be able to hit the ground running here in the last portion of the season, especially when they get home against the Mets and the Royals, because they're gonna need him against them.
Oh yeah, and D-Bell, the other thing I like about Ozzie Albies, and sometimes definitely they do need what he can bring to the table at the plate. But I think also there's just something about having someone in the lineup like him. We talk a lot on this show about having that dog or having that edge or having just the heart and soul be out there or not be out there. And when you've lost so many guys that have that kind of edge and that grit and that grind, like a Spencer Strider, like a Ronald Acuna Jr., like an Austin Riley, you need one of those stalwarts. And I'm thinking about that too. Those are stalwarts of the team. So it's not just about what those guys do at the plate or what they do at their respective position, but it's also what they bring to the table, D-Bell. And I feel like with Ozzie, he's all of the above, right? His defense is stellar. Ozzie's going to bring it at the plate, but more importantly, he's that guy who can get into the locker room and also help those guys to reset their minds in the dugout for this final stretch to hopefully get them over the hump.
Yeah, I think that's, for me, that's one of the things that when you look at what he brings to the table, being one of the leaders in the clubhouse, being that guy, right? And he's the kind of heart and soul of this team, I feel. I think a lot of people just kind of gravitate towards Ozzie because he just has that, he's just so infectious with just who he is as a person. So, and I think, what D mentioned as far as batting only right-handed now, if from traditionally, in his career, that's where most of his power came from, right? Most of his home runs, almost half of the home runs he's hit since he's been in the major leagues have come from that right side of the plate. So and that's what the Braves need now. They need to be able to have somebody in there to go yard. So, but it is, I do agree that that is a lot of pressure. But when you think about how, I know there have been some rumblings, from the fan base, and I've even thought about it as well. I was like, what if he just started batting right-handed consistently? Because that's his home. That's what he grew up playing. So, and I think that just from an ego standpoint, it's no, I don't need to switch. I'm a switch hitter. That's what I do. So I feel I'll be very interested to watch how he bats come down the stretch. So like I said, he's on track for Friday, and I'll be interested to see how he how that plays out in that series, because he's batting, he's at home essentially, batting from the right side of the plate. And I'll also be interested to see what they do with Merrifield, because I think that's going to be interesting too, because we know he's playing on with the fracture, and saying that he might go out to left field. I don't know if that's necessarily a good idea by throwing somebody in the outfield that's playing with a stress fracture in his foot. So I'll be interested to see how that plays out as well.
Indeed. Now, if I'm looking at this correctly, Demetrius, It looks like Chris Sale hasn't had a start against the Cincinnati Reds for the Braves this season. That might not actually be a bad thing, because maybe they'll need him to bring some of that hoodoo that he gives to the rest of this league against the Reds, and kind of maybe being that person also who can be a spark. Because I'll tell you, this is a little bit off key and a little bit off track, but for me, Chris Sale is the dog. Like, I feel like he's that guy who has all the edge that the Braves need, whether they're up, whether they're down. Chris Sale is going to bring it each and every day. And I think Spencer Schwellenbach has shown us a whole heck of a lot in him just being such a gem for what this pitching rotation needed with this pitcher went down, when that pitcher went down, all throughout the season. So that said, if they're up next for the Braves against this Red team, can we expect maybe for them to be the spark that gets things turned around, with them taking the mound for the Braves as they wrap up the series?
Chris Sale, absolutely. Like, I'm fully expecting him to be the guy who stays the ship for as far as the Braves are concerned.
Yeah,
in the games that he started this year, they are 21-7.
Yes.
Outside, maybe dating back to when he had that weird start where he just got completely mollywopped by the Oakland A's. Other than that, he's been completely nails, completely dominant. Nobody, barely anybody's been able to touch him. And so it's just he's on track. He's going to win the Cy Young easily. He's probably going to get MVP votes. He's definitely been the MVP of the Braves this year, in my opinion.
Comeback player of the year. I mean, yeah.
All that, yeah.
And he's even up for the pitch and triple crown. So with Chris Sale, I have no worries about him right now. He's gonna do what he's gonna do. And then with Spencer Schwellenbach, he's been completely reliable, which has been really nice, really a fresh air, because you're hoping that they didn't have to have a revolving door in his spot in the rotation, and he was able to fill his spot in the rotation. And it honestly reminds me of that other guy named Spencer when he was Preston the Dewey when he first came in. Where it's just we need we got all these injuries, we need somebody to just be consistent. And Schwellenbach's been able to do that, and so it's been really impressive, and I'm looking forward to him having a good start.
Yeah, and I think that, we can't say enough about Chris Sale. So, and I feel when you think about what he's been able to do, D.I.'s always been a guy, 7 innings, 1 or 2 runs. That's all you got to do is give us 3, Atlanta. Give us 3 runs when he's on the mound, and it's going to be a dub, I promise you. So, but yeah, I think the Spencer Schwellenbach one is very interesting, because we understand, going back to last year, just that 5th rotating spot is just, it's always been oh yeah, we're gonna bring this guy up. Oh, we're gonna bring this guy up. Oh, we're gonna bring this guy up. But I'm glad that Spencer's kind of swelled in, right? I just made up a word. Sweatled in. That's what my brain is working right now. Thank you. But I think that with Schwellenbach, the thing for him, I feel I know that having a variety of pitches has worked for him, in this season. But he's gonna have to. I feel it's just my personal opinion. I'm not a baseball expert, but I feel he's gonna have to dwindle that down, to a solid 3 or 4 pitches that he can go to. But I understand having a repertoire in today's game. But I feel if he can just hone in on those 3 or 4 pitches that he's super comfortable throwing, I feel he'll be able to grow more into, not from being a back end of a rotation guy to maybe a middle of the rotation guy type guy.
Yeah, and this will be his first start against the Cincinnati Reds this season as well. And hopefully you'll get him to do a reset like he had against the Los Angeles Dodgers last Friday, where, of course, he pitched 6 innings of 2-run balls. So, yeah, the Braves are going to need both of them to bring everything and then some to the mound in order for us to be having a good conversation in about a week and a half or so. Thanks to our everydayers for making the Atlanta Baseball Party your first listen of the day. Be sure to stop by Locked On Braves for your second listen, and be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're also free and available wherever you download your podcasts. We'll see you on the Atlanta Sports Party Thursday.